And a lot of people realize, well, there's a biased media, and most people know that. Even the Washington Post admitted it. Yeah, we were biased for Obama, so what?
Isn't that interesting? The Communist Manifesto also thought the state should take control of children. Isn't that interesting? The Communist Manifesto also thought the state should take control of children at birth. The left has always been good at disguising their real agenda by coming up with phrases made from words we are very familiar with, but then giving them new definitions. Social justice is the current phrase of choice and is being used to teach children the failed Marxist ideas of yesteryear are what they should strive for today.
We see social justice curriculum today, which is the buzzword for communism, socialism, Marxism, which Bill Ayers is teaching. It's in many of our colleges, and the social justice curriculum is being taught in high schools all over the nation.
Justice is good. If you then start calling something blank justice, then you're modifying it. And what it really means is, I think, taking from one group of people and giving to another group. So I would call it socialisms.
And it's used to break down the differences between the way things are done and the way it should be done.
So when they're teaching social justice in the schools, they're not talking about free enterprise and capitalism and individual self-responsibility, all the things that made America great. They're talking about the things that made Europe and the Soviet Union and China so bad.
The longer we allow our schools to teach the children that America has so many faults it's not worth saving, instead of the fact that even with its faults it is the greatest country that has ever existed, the less chance we have of ever turning our people back from the dead-end road we're currently on, a road that promises to give us a perfect world if we'll only give up our sovereignty and our freedom.
You're going to find more and more of the following. This is now called a world pledge. We no longer want the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America because that is considered nationalistic, and of course the socialists, communists, and the Marxists and the extreme left wing in the country want nothing to do with it. I pledge allegiance to the world, to care for earth, sea, and air, to honor every living thing with peace and justice everywhere. This came out, first of all, in Superior, Wisconsin. So Superior, Wisconsin was their guinea pig, and there was very little said against it, and so it would then go to the next and the next and the next, and before long you'll have the whole school system standing up saying, I pledge allegiance to the world instead of I pledge allegiance to the U.S. The public schools right now, if you'll read Towards Soviet America, have nearly accepted every item that William Z. Foster said we needed to place into the public school curriculum.
And we're seeing the results. You know, people are not as informed as they once were. They think in different ways, and they think in the way that the left intends them to think.
Antonio Gramsci realized that if you can take over the institutions and culture, you will be able to use those to influence society to create the socialist man you want. I think the most brilliant part of his plan was that he realized you could not only create a man that wanted big government to take care of him cradle to grave, but, and this is the genius of Gramsci, you could create a man that needed big government to take care of him cradle to grave. A man so dumbed down and so minimized in society, he wouldn't have the intellect or character to take care of himself. The reason this is so deadly for America is that once we have a certain percentage of the population in that category, our limited constitutional form of government is no longer possible because too many people won't be able to exist in that framework. We are approaching that tipping point rapidly.
If you can persuade people that government should be in control of the distribution and use of energy, you can persuade them, or rather, you have persuaded them of the necessary and sufficient condition for government control of the most intimate aspects of our lives.
One of the main thrusts of socialism these days is obviously through the environmental movement.
You know, one hates to pick on Al Gore too quickly and easily, but I read the whole of his book, Earth in the Balance, Ecology and the Human Spirit, back in 1992 when it was first published. And if you know anything about the history of political philosophy, you read the last chapter in that called A Global Marshall Plan, and you understand that there is no way to implement what Al Gore was calling for in 1992 in that book except by means of totalitarian world government.
Patrick Moore, who was a co-founder of Greenpeace, and he was a very dedicated environmentalist, quit Greenpeace when he realized that it had been captured by radical leftists who were intent on using the environmental movement as a vehicle to destroy capitalism.
How many factories work when there's a power outage? None. You want to hurt business, you want to drive down industrial production, you just drive up the prices of energy, you just diminish its availability, and the easiest way to do that is to make people scared to death of the cheapest forms of energy, which are fossil fuels, oil, coal, natural gas, and nuclear energy. They had already made people afraid of nuclear because of irrational fears of nuclear reactor meltdowns, which were physically impossible anyway. But then they had to figure out a way to make them afraid of fossil fuels. Well, the way to do that was to say they're going to cause catastrophic global warming.
So I used to think this was just one great big distraction. If they want to put their energies toward the environment, but now I see that this is now being turned around and used as a tool to further a socialist agenda.
Charles Rubin, a political scientist who wrote the book The Green Crusade, has told this story extremely well. Environment comes from a French word meaning surroundings. Well, now, what is surroundings? Everything around you, right? And so, as Rubin points out, environmentalism is literally everythingism. And so, if you were a socialist committed ideologically to the notion of government having control of everything about our lives, and you saw that you were losing the contest in terms of the creation of wealth and its distribution to capitalism, you had to find some other basis on which to promote your vision of government and to pursue its implementation. Environmentalism, or everythingism, was the perfect card.
In December of 2009, when the ClimateGate scandal broke open and it became public that even the leaders of the movement knew the whole global warming idea was a farce, it wasn't them just having bad data, we as Americans knew once and for all that this movement was simply part of their agenda. It's my guess that regardless of the evidence that comes out against them, they will not let this tool they have waited the last 100 years for go to waste. A tool that gives them the absolute power and control they want, but allows them to get it under the guise of saving the planet.
He was born of left-wing parents. He was mentored as a young man by a Communist Party member called Frank Marshall Davis. Now, Davis joined the Communist Party in Chicago, and he was very well connected there. So young Obama eventually wound up in Chicago, and he started working with the very same people that had been working with his friend Frank Marshall Davis.
All of his associations have been with people that are way left of center, hardcore left.
And he's doing nothing more than what is predictable based upon that background.
The nicest word for his agenda is a socialist agenda, and we could go on down the line of the other descriptors of the types of an economy and a society that he's building.